today. Today I'm going to be talking about what greater faith looks like. If you were at the luncheon last Sunday, change the slides here. I can't do that with my clicker. If you were at the luncheon last week, I just gave an overall picture of just what the mission and vision of what Mosaic Church is meant to be. Our mission at Mosaic is to be a church that leads people to live by greater faith. And if you know anything about faith, I've come to realize faith is not this static, stagnant, passive thing that we just identify with. It's not just a phase in our journey, but it's an active skill that the Christian is meant to exercise and literally put to work. And so in the Bible, Jesus makes it clear there are people who have little faith and there are people who have great faith. Little faith and great faith. And what that means is Jesus is literally quantifying and qualifying our faith. If we think that faith is all the same across the board, if you just call yourself and identify yourself as a person of faith, you're missing the point. Jesus makes it clear there is great faith and there is little faith. He's showing us a difference and differentiating between little faith and great faith, the quantity and the quality of faith. And so I've come to realize that there is a direct correlation between the size of my faith and the movement of God's power. And that may seem a little bit weird and almost antithetical to what you've been taught about faith, but there's so many evidences throughout Scripture where he goes to his hometown, and he could only do a few miracles. Why? Because they had little faith. And so all throughout Scripture, you see this narrative of great faith and little faith, and it just seems like a coincidence that Jesus would call his disciples little faith, but then the Canaanite woman, the Samaritan woman, the centurion, the Roman centurion, people who are not technically a part of the faith, he says, you have a great faith. I've never seen faith like this in all of Israel. So we have to come to grips with the reality. There's no time for us to argue about what faith is and what faith can look like. Faith here is a skill. And oftentimes in our life, there's a gap between the present and the promise. There's a gap between what is currently and what is meant to be. And sometimes that gap can only be closed by great faith. And that may be a little hard to swallow and hard to admit. But the gap there oftentimes is a chance for us to walk in greater faith. So that's our mission. Our heart and our hope here is to help you live by greater faith. And today we're going to be getting into that. So, Matthew chapter 15, verse 21 to 28. It says this: Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from that vicinity came to him crying out, "Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is demon-possessed and suffering terribly." Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, "Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us." He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel." The woman came and knelt before him. "Lord, help me," she said. He replied, "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." "Yes, it is, Lord," she said. "Even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus said to her, "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." And her daughter was healed at that moment. That is the word of the Lord. Greater faith in this moment. If you look at this passage, it's a highly offensive passage. He's literally ignoring a woman and calling her a dog. And at the end, he gives her one of the greatest commendations that only a few people in all of Scripture received, which was, "You have great faith." But you see here, my focus here is not so much about Jesus, but about this woman and her attitude and her heart and how she's literally putting her faith into work. And so the first point that I want to share with us is this: greater faith sees silence as a chance to draw nearer to Jesus. Jesus did not answer a word. Verse 23. Little faith, when it encounters silence, specifically from God, we see it as a sign of rejection or refusal. We see it as a sign of even misunderstanding. And sometimes what little faith does, it misinterprets the silence. But you see what great faith does, great faith looks at the silence and interprets it. I went to school, English, interprets it as an opportunity to draw nearer to Jesus. In verse 25, what does it say after this? The woman came and knelt before Jesus. So in the face of God's silence, what does this woman do? Because she has greater faith, she takes Jesus' silence and sees it as a chance to draw nearer, draw closer to Jesus. But what do we do? What do I do when God is silent? Forget it. Just walk away. How many of us have failed to steward the silence of God and just take it as refusal, as rejection? How many of us have seen God's silence? We pray, and some of you guys are praying for great things. Some of you guys are praying for great expectations were really just masked as great demands. And I'll get into that a little bit later if I have time. But you see here that oftentimes we go to God and we keep praying, and then we keep praying, and we keep praying, we keep hoping, we keep believing, we keep trying, and then God is silent. We've all been there. We've all faced the silence. But you see, great faith stewards the silence and takes it as a chance to draw nearer to Jesus. Great faith doesn't get offended by the silence, but looks at the silence as a chance for God to just come in and do what he can do. In my sophomore year of college, I met my wife my freshman year of college. So I was an 18-year-old kid that literally knew nothing. I know just a little bit more than that 18-year-old kid today. But I met my wife when I was 18 years old, and someone told us this great advice to pray for an entire year and to not talk to each other for an entire year and just pray. It's not good advice. Don't do that. To pray for an entire year and just see what God says. And so my sophomore year comes rolling around, and literally what I do is every Tuesday and Thursday, in between classes, I had an hour to kill. I would go to this church that was on campus. It was open to anyone to come in and pray. I would go to that place, and I would pray for an hour every Tuesday and every Thursday. I did that for 2 semesters, praying every day or every Tuesday and every Thursday for an hour in between classes. And I would ask God the same exact thing. God, is she the one? Is she the one? And looking back now, that was such a faithless prayer. But I would ask her, God, is she the one? When really deep down inside, I just knew, I know I want her to be the one. But I just want to know if you want her to be the one. And if she's not, then we probably have something to talk about here, because I don't think I'm going to take no for an answer. But, I'm sure we could work something out. But for an entire year, God was silent. And at a certain point, I was frustrated. I did everything I could. I even started praying on the altar. And it was like a very high, high worship kind of church. So there was all these different altars, and it was just so disrespectful of me. But I would try to do whatever I could to draw nearer to God. And in that, I think there was some principle behind it, but God was just silent. And at a certain point, at the end of myself, I was just so frustrated. I was at the end of I couldn't take it anymore. I was like, God, I'm done. I can't do this. You're not telling me, so I'm just gonna do what I wanted to do in the first place, which is to marry this girl. And think about that. I'm an 18-year-old kid saying I'm gonna marry this girl. How many 18-year-olds in your life have you walked up to and said, yeah, I'm gonna marry this girl, and you actually believed them? It's stupid. It makes no sense. So no one trusted me or believed me, but I just said, God, I'm gonna marry this girl. And you know what I felt in my spirit? God was just kind of like, finally. And I was like, oh, what? He was like, God, it was almost as if like the waterfall just started pouring out, and I was like actually hearing from God, and then God was just speaking and saying, like, what do you want? And I was like, I want to be with Faith, and I want to marry her. And he's like, okay, finally. Koreans, we call that shiwane, right? It's like refreshing. And it was almost like it was refreshing to God's soul, not necessarily mine. And so for so long, I took the silence as rejection. I took it as confusion. I took it as refusal. But really, it was almost as if God was just waiting for me to come to the revelation that is actually what I wanted, while I was just waiting for God to tell me what he wanted. All right, parents, you all get that. Sometimes you want things for your kids, but sometimes they want things for themselves. And depending on the battle and how big the battle is, sometimes, lots of times, we lose, right? You see, God, he knows better. He knows more. And you see, greater faith is just an opportunity. It's a chance to draw near to Jesus in the silence. Second here, greater faith sees others' blessings as a chance for Jesus to bless. Verse 24, this is Jesus talking to this woman. I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. Here's this woman begging Jesus, walking up to Jesus, asking Jesus to heal her daughter. And how does he respond? I wasn't sent to you. He literally is telling her, my calling is not you. I was sent to the lost sheep of Israel. I was sent to these specific group of people. But the woman, she came and knelt before Jesus and said, Lord, help me. Greater faith sees others' blessings as a chance for Jesus to bless them. You see, from the beginning of Abram, from the beginning of the Jewish faith, the Lord said to Abram, go to your country, your people, and your father's house, and to the land I will show you. I'll make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I'll make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the peoples on earth will be what? Blessed through you. Let's say that together. Blessed through you. So what was the principle that we see here of God's blessing? The principle is that he blesses one to bless all. He blesses one to bless all. That was God's modus operandi. That was his mode of operation. That's his order of operation. That's how he did things. He blessed one in order to bless all. And so you see here, when Jesus tells this woman, I was sent to the lost sheep of Israel, he's basically exercising the principle, I'm here to bless the one, the lost sheep of Israel. But the woman, she didn't take that as a no. She refused to take that as a no. And so you see here, Jesus is literally saying, I'm here to bless one specific type of people. I'm here to bless the lost sheep of Israel. But the woman, she refused to see others' blessings as a denial of hers, but she saw it as a chance for Jesus to bless her. How do you know this? Because she just gets closer and asks Jesus, help me, bless me. And you see that even after that, it's like, even the crumbs, the dogs will eat the crumbs off the table. She's not offended or deterred by others people's blessings. She just sees it as hers. And you know that principle, bless one to bless many, that in theory, that's a good principle. And in theory, I think maybe like 3/4 of you guys like actually believe that. And it's all good until you see the lost sheep of Israel being blessed. What do I mean? When you see your coworker who did not deserve that promotion get that promotion. When you see your neighbor with the fancy new car and the new house and the new lawnmower. We're suburban dads here. Like you guys all have leaf blowers that are completely unnecessary for the amount of leafage that you have. But we all see it. We saw neighbors like, oh, the Red Max there. I think I got to get that one. I got to upgrade. It's all good. The blessing one to bless many principle is great until you start seeing your neighbors being blessed, until you start seeing other people get the thing that you've been praying for. So how well do you steward other people's blessings? How well in your life, when someone gets what you wanted, how well do you bless them? How well do you go to Jesus? You see, this woman, she could have at any moment walked away. She could have just completely denied Jesus and said, Jesus, you're clearly not a good God. And if you actually look at the interaction of Jesus and this woman, he doesn't look nice. But you see, greater faith refuses to be refused. Greater faith refuses to see other people being blessed without them being blessed. Because the principle is that when you bless one, you bless all. And so here in this room, when you get blessed with something, the principle is that Jesus blesses so that he can bless all. Greater faith sees that. But little faith gets offended. Little faith looks at that and says, why did the person less qualified than me, younger than me, with less experience than me, even maybe have a different racial skin tone than me, why did that person get the job? Why did that person get this, that, and the other? How you steward other people's blessings speaks to the level of faith that you have. Maybe other people's blessings, what it does is it reveals the quality and the quantity of your faith. And when you get offended by other people's blessings, it's just an opportunity to increase your faith. It just shows you how little your faith actually is. Lastly here, last point. Greater faith sees offense as an opportunity. He replied, it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. Dogs, that word is not like, you know how we actually like love animals in our culture now and actually care more about our dogs than probably our children? I say that I have 2 dogs. I don't care about my dogs more than my children. But this word here was a derogatory term of abuse to the Gentiles. It's like the closest thing to a curse word that Jesus can say to somebody else. This wasn't like a Christianese term like, hey, you bad man. It is asterisk. It's not Christianese here. Jesus, he's literally being explicit, using explicit language with this Canaanite woman. And in that, look at her faith. She refuses to see this offense as she sees this offense as an opportunity for blessing. How does she respond? She says, yes, it is. It is. Because even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. My goodness. She refused to be offended, but rather she took it as an opportunity for God to bless, for Jesus to bless. So we have to ask ourselves these 3 things. How do you handle God's silence? When he's not answering your prayers, when he's not giving you a yes, no, or maybe, but he's just silent. A lot of preachers have used that, saying God will either give you yes, no, or maybe later. No, sometimes there's a 4th option, and God just doesn't say a thing. How do you handle the silence? It's a chance for greater faith. How do you handle other people's blessings? It's a chance for greater faith. How do you handle offense? I'm not talking about like fake social media Instagram offense that you see something on there and you're just like, man, this is like so offensive. I'm talking about like offense from God, offended by God. And that's a whole nother like spiritual formation thing that you probably need to work through. Just understanding that it is possible for you to be offended. If there hasn't been anyone in this world that's not been offended, if you're saying like, I've never been offended by God, you probably just are completely not self-aware. It is possible. It is easy to be offended by God because it all leads back to God anyways. And so even when you get offended by someone on the street cutting you off, really it's almost like you're looking at God and saying, what? God, what? Why'd you let that happen? God, why'd you let this happen? We're offended by God. And it's okay to admit that, but it's not okay to sit in the offense. You see, the offense is just an opportunity. It's an opportunity for God to bless. And if you refuse to see the offense as an opportunity, then you're going to miss out. Imagine if this story ended right here. Imagine if when Jesus called this woman a dog, it's ended right there. We wouldn't see this great faith. So how do you handle silence? How do you handle other people's blessings? How do you handle offense? That, my friends, is the litmus test to the condition, the quality, and the quantity of your faith. Praise team, you can come up. We're going to close with this. We're going to enter into a time called, we call it Seek for Sunday, but it's really just an extended time of prayer and an opportunity for you to be blessed by God. But when we were starting this church, back in around 2020, our journey started in 2020, and we were about 27 days away from being homeless, like my family, my nuclear family, 27 days away from being homeless, and that's the context of how our church started. And when we were starting, there was just literally no movement. Like, nothing was happening. Josh Beekman, where are you at? You remember those days, right? We couldn't get 5 people in a room together. If we had 5 people in a living room together, that was success for us. Right, Josh? You remember those days? And I remember there was just no movement. And God already did so many miracles for us to get to that point. And our house was a miracle. Our, getting into all these different things and situations, it was a miracle. But there was just no movement happening when it came to a lot of the other stuff when it came to church. And I remember I woke up one morning, this was in August 2021. I woke up and I just knew in my spirit, we have to start preview services. And specifically, my wife, Faith, she has to preach. And so I woke up, I went to my wife and I said, babe, we need to start preview services. And you need to preach. And she was like, with who and with what? And I just said, I don't know, but I feel like we need to start it, and we need to start it next month. And so we booked a venue, not even sure if 5 people would come. I think we had 7, which is still a success. But, I'm not the smartest guy or the most prepared guy. And I realized, to actually have a church service, you actually need to have things like this and, things like this and a mic. And all of our equipment, you know what we had as equipment? We had a mic stand with no mic. That was the extent of all of our equipment. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, how do we start church? How do we do this? And I remember I was talking to a church pastor friend in the city. They've been around for a long time, and they were a church plant. And I was talking to him, and I was just trying to connect with him about, hey, do you guys have a mic? Do you have a mic that we can borrow? And I remember sitting there on Amazon.com looking at the mics. It's like, $99 mic. We can't afford that. But then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, wait, a mic needs a cable, and it needs speakers. And I'm like, I don't know how to do any of that. So I closed Amazon and just started praying, not sure what to do or how to go about it. And as I was talking to this pastor in New York City, I literally told him this. I said, you know what, Paul? Crumbs to you guys are meals to us. So if you have any crumbs, please, it's going to be a meal to me. And in the beginning, they were just like, oh yeah, we can maybe give you like this, that. It's not too much, but but then when I said that, I said, crumbs to you are meals to us. Something just like unlocked in him, and he's like, you know what? Now that you mentioned that, we do have a warehouse that we're trying to get out of. And we do have a storage unit that we need to, get out of as soon as possible. You can look around and see what we have. And I was like, great. If there's a mic there, I'll take it. And then he just said, but don't expect much, man. Like, we already had our other campuses go through, and it's probably stripped clean. So don't expect much. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. As long as you have a mic, I'll take that. And a cable, maybe. I walk into the storage unit. It was at least 2,000 square feet of storage in the city. And I'm like, I didn't know places like this existed. And I brought a tiny little U-Haul in the beginning because I just thought I just need a mic. But hopefully there's more than a mic. I walk into the storage unit. Literally everything's all set up. All these cases. Everything that you actually see here today is from that storage unit. And so I walk in and I'm like, wait. I'm talking to the guy and I'm asking him, so I can have all of this? And he's like, you know what? I'm not sure, but, we can ask. I'm like, no, don't ask. I'll just take it. Yeah, literally, I was like, no, it's okay. I think me and Paul were cool. We had like one conversation in life. And so I literally took it. We walked out of that place. I had to go back 2 times with a bigger U-Haul. We walked out of that place with at least $100,000 worth of equipment. And yeah, you can clap for that. And all that started was I just told Paul, I said, Paul, crumbs to you are meals to us. And what started as just a thought of a preview service ended up being one of the most valuable treasure. I don't know. I think we raided the temple there. It wasn't like I took things that I'm pretty sure I wasn't supposed to. But I was like, you know what, Lord? It's my meal. Guys, sometimes the thing that you're looking at, it may seem impossible. It may seem like you don't have enough, which you don't. It may seem like you'll never be where you're at, which you're not. You may seem too small, which you probably are. But what greater faith does is it gives God a chance to close the gap between the present and the promise, to close the gap between what is and what can be. And all you have to do is just give God a chance, just a chance to do what he can do. So many of us just fail to give God a chance because it's out of our control. Well, thank God it's not in your control, because that's not what faith is. Faith is not control. Faith is a chance. And the more chances you give God, the more you will see God move, and the more the increase of faith that you will have. Ever since that point, there have been 5 times specifically where in the history of our church, where I just knew we're not going to make it next month. And trust me, it doesn't get easier. Like if I'd be lying to you if I said, oh man, my faith is so strong I can handle it. No, it genuinely becomes stressful. But I can tell you, it's not easy. But when you see God prove himself over and over again, when you look at the bank account, when you look at the circumstances, and you wonder, are you going to make it next month? In the beginning, it was terrifying. But now, it's just an opportunity. It's a scary opportunity, but it's an opportunity. Greater faith is just giving God a chance. Won't you give him a chance today? Let's rise and let's worship. Let's enter into this moment of worship. And as we sing these songs, we're not just singing a song, but we're going to Jesus and we're giving him a chance to bless us, to close the gap between the present and the promise. And so won't you here today, right now, give God a chance. Give God a chance give him a chance with your life, with your soul, with your family, with your work, your ministry. Give God a chance. Let's worship.